Today I'm so excited to have Kevin Knebl as my guest, and he's got a special offer at the end. But just to find out more, you can go to kevinknebl.com, KNEBL.com. So about 3 or 4 years ago, Kevin and I were sitting in a coffee shop just talking about where we wanted our lives to go. And Kevin's such a great guy. He had been doing LinkedIn trainings and social media trainings as a part-time business for quite a while by then. And he said, Michelle, I really want to go for this and do this full time. I got to tell you, here we are. 3.5 or 4 years later, Kevin is one of the most sought-after speakers internationally anywhere about social media, LinkedIn, and how to generate more business using these new social media tools. Kevin has the top rankings as a speaker that you can get anywhere. So Kevin, welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you, and I want to know, how do you go from a dream to this huge successful company where you're traveling all over the world? What does it take?
Thank you, Michelle. It's great to be here. And isn't it funny? I mean, I think physically you and I only live about maybe 25 or 30 miles apart.
Right.
But you're, I see you I don't physically see, I have never been to India, but I see you're in India, or I see you or over here or over there. And even though we only live about 30 miles apart, you and I almost never get together physically. But isn't it great we can get it together on Skype like this?
I love this, and I see you all over the world too, Germany and Chicago, and that's one of the fantastic things about being an entrepreneur, isn't it? Is we get to travel for business and pleasure. So tell me, how do you go from this dream to successful speaker, entrepreneur, business person? What does it take?
You sure you don't want to ask me a bigger question then? That's like a monumental question.
Yeah.
How do you go from a dream of doing something to actually doing it? I can't speak for other people. I can only speak for me. So for me, I was in corporate sales, and I was blessed to have some great mentors who taught me that long-term success in sales was about relationships and not closing skills and press hard 3 copies, the price goes up on Monday, and all that kind of stuff. So what happened was, while I continued to keep my corporate sales career going, I was doing a little bit of speaking and training on the side, as you mentioned in the intro, related to LinkedIn, related to Twitter, but really not from a technical perspective, because anybody could go on Twitter or LinkedIn and just look at the tutorials and see which buttons to push. But the art is, how do you convert anonymous online people into offline relationships and revenue? And I personally believe that that's not necessarily a marketing art or anything like that. It's a sales art. So because of my background in sales, I was able to transition from a full-time sales career into a full-time speaking career pretty quickly. I didn't just cut the line one day and just jump into the abyss. I had already started doing some little trainings, but when I left my job on June 9th, 2009, 4 years and 2 months ago.
Okay, there's the date.
My entire life changed. So I guess the answer to your question is, you don't do it immediately. It's kind of like gaining weight and losing hair. It just kind of happens over time.
Kevin, I want to go back because you brought up something that I think a lot of people are confused about. Sales versus marketing.
Yeah.
A lot of people sort of lump them together. Yeah. Tell me what
S&M.
Tell me. Let's not go there. Tell me the difference. The difference in sales and marketing.
I think sales is actually fulfilling somebody's needs or delivering a solution to a problem or a pain. I think that marketing is setting the table so that individual or that organization is open to you explaining and ultimately solving that pain or solving that problem. So marketing is really preparing the field for you to actually be embraced as a possible solution provider. Sales is actually getting the agreement and then actually delivering the service. From a very high 50,000 foot level, that's how I would describe it.
Yeah, I love that description. I've never quite heard it put like that way before, and I really like that, because really at that moment where you're moving into sales, it gets a little fuzzy. But most entrepreneurs really need to know a little bit of both, and they really do need to know how to sell.
They really do. A matter of fact, if I could, can I make a quick comment on that?
Please.
You know, I've been a full-time speaker now for 4 years. I mean, I did it part-time, a little bit of speaking here and there for like the last 18 years, but really as a full-time profession the last 4 years. And you probably get the same thing I get. I get, no exaggeration, I get anywhere from 1 to 5 people a week who either call me, email me, ping me on Facebook, whatever, and say, you know what, I want to be a speaker. I got a book in me, or I've got a message in me, and I want to make an impact on people, and that's all wonderful. But I tell them, you know, I'm not a speaker coach. I'm not going to take you from your day job and turn you into a super speaker. That's not really what I consider my expertise. But if there's one thing that I have learned over the last 4 years, running around the world speaking and also sharing stages with other people that are speakers and authors and coaches, I don't consider myself God's gift to speaking. I mean, I think I'm pretty good, but I'm certainly not, you know, I'm not up there doing Hamlet. I'm not, you know. But if there's one thing that has really served me well, I can see it now in hindsight. It was my sales experience over the last 20 years. Because really, a person, I don't care how eloquent they are or how important their message is, they could have the cure to cancer. But if they can't get the engagement and knock it out of the park and then turn that into multiple other engagements and referrals, it really doesn't matter how good their message is. So I tell people all the time, for every minute you're trying to figure out the speaking business or this or that, spend a little bit of time going back to some old school sales training. And if you don't like the word sales, because when I first got into sales, I was a piano player in New York City. I was completely opposed to sales. But when I shifted in my head the word sales to service, my life changed. Now it wasn't I was going to go out and sell somebody something today. It was how could I deliver massive service to people, and everything changed.
Now, you talk about service, and I know that that's really important with how you approach everything that you do on social media, and we're going to go there in a minute. But what's interesting is I just interviewed Bob Berg.
Oh, I love Bob.
He talks a lot about service, and I know you know him. Tell me how he's impacted your life.
I love Bob Berg. I love Bob Berg. Bob Berg, if you're watching this, I love you. Not in a weird, creepy way. All right, so I first met Bob around 1994. I was at a business conference in Boston. I was in the audience with about 10,000 people. And through a chain of events, I was actually honored. It's going to sound weird to maybe to some of your listeners when they hear me say that I was honored to actually work. But I was honored to carry Bob Berg's briefcase for an entire day. So he was a key speaker at a large conference in Boston at a huge arena, 10,000 people. And I got to spend the entire day at his hip, holding his briefcase while he signed books and shook hands and stuff like that. So I got kind of an inside track on him. He probably doesn't even remember that, right? But it was years and years ago, and he had just come out with the book Endless Referrals. Mm-hmm. And I read that book, and my mind was blown, because really that book is about relationships, right? How to build, enhance, and maintain and enrich relationships. And it made a shift in my thinking. And then over the years, I mean, I remember when Bob came out with The Go-Giver, and I remember when he came out with The Go-Giver, Sell More, and then he and John David Mann created those books, and I've watched Bob evolve over the last 20 years, and I consider myself very blessed that if I pick up the phone and call Bob, he'll actually take my call. Yeah. It doesn't really happen, maybe once a year, but he is a perfect example of a person who walks the talk. There's a lot. You and I both know a lot of people that can talk a good game, but if you really get to know them on a personal level, there's a disconnect. That's not Bob.
And I love how you've both talked about service as being the focal point of sales, and when you're coming from that place of being in service, of giving of yourself, of seeing how you can solve someone else's need, it changes the whole focus and all the hype around sales. And you do that on social media. So I want to go to social media because that's your expertise. You're on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook that I know of. Are you on Instagram and Clout and, Pinterest and all the others?
I'm quite aware of all the other ones. I made a strategic decision about 5 years ago to only focus on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter until I had a compelling enough reason to become very active on another platform. I am in no way putting down Google Plus or Pinterest or any of the other ones. It's just that my corporate clients keep me so busy that I really just, and I really just focus primarily on LinkedIn and Twitter, although I use Facebook a lot on a personal level.
Okay, so that's what I want to ask you, because I am on Facebook a lot and on LinkedIn and Twitter a little bit, right? And so you and I interact on Facebook a little. Each one of those has a slightly different energy, I guess. Facebook is maybe more personal and less corporate.
Sure. Well, it's more social.
More social. So how would you describe LinkedIn? How would you describe Twitter?
LinkedIn is the world's, if anybody's watching this.
Hopefully lots of people are watching this.
No, but let me finish that thought. If anybody's watching this that remembers the word Rolodex.
Oh, yeah.
I'm 48 years old. Michelle Vandepas, 39.
Yeah,
so Michelle won't remember this word, but there was a word called Rolodex. And a Rolodex was this thing where you would flip your business cards, and that's how you kept your contacts. This was pre-internet, pre-Palm Pilots and Blackberries and iPhones. So the simplest way to think about LinkedIn is an electronic Rolodex. As of this recording, there are about 225 million LinkedIn users worldwide. The average LinkedIn user is over 40 years old and earns over $100,000 a year. So this is a very desirable business demographic. So the answer to your question of what's LinkedIn, LinkedIn is a business networking platform. It has some social aspects, but really it's about business. If I'm thinking about doing business with somebody, or if I have a phone call scheduled at a certain time, the first thing I'm going to do is pull up their LinkedIn profile to see how they want to represent themselves to me. And in the old days, that was called due diligence. It was called market research. It was just called doing your homework. So instead of winging it. So most people, by the way, have absolutely no clue what a gold mine LinkedIn really is. And that doesn't mean they're stupid people. It just means nobody's ever taken them by the hand.
Right.
But I've been blessed to help companies and individuals make millions and millions of dollars by using LinkedIn effectively. So it's a business networking platform. You want me to answer the question about Twitter?
Twitter, yeah. So explain to us how you use Twitter.
Twitter, in a nutshell, Twitter is global text messaging. So I have a lot of people say, isn't Twitter about Kim Kardashian and SpongeBob? And I say, well, yeah, it is. But so is the telephone. Because there's a lot of people that think, oh, Twitter's a waste of time. And I say, well, if you called a 13-year-old on your telephone and you talk for 30 minutes about Kim Kardashian and SpongeBob, would you ever hang up the phone and do this? What a piece of garbage. I'm never using that thing again. No, you wouldn't throw the phone out. You would just say, what the heck was I doing wasting 30 minutes on the phone talking about SpongeBob? So it has nothing to do with the phone. It either has to do with the quality or the lack of quality of the conversation through the telephone. So Twitter is global text messaging. That's all it is. You can send out messages up to 140 characters maximum, so it forces you to keep it short and sweet. But Twitter, like LinkedIn, like Facebook, like Google, is a search engine. People need to understand that if you want to learn about something, it could be your profession, it could be your competition, it could be a thought leader in your industry, it could be fly fishing or nude macrame. Anything in the world you want to learn about, if you typed those words into Twitter, it would pull up any and all references to those words. So Twitter becomes a gold mine just for doing due diligence. So again, I know you didn't want me to give a whole Twitter course, but Twitter is, for business professionals, it is truly a gold mine when learned how to use effectively.
Yeah, I love that. I used to be on Twitter a lot. And like many of my clients, and I'm sure many of the people watching and listening to this, it gets to be overwhelming. Now I have to get a figure here. You're on LinkedIn. Are you really connected? You're connected with I don't have it here. More than 1,500 people have given you recommendations alone, and you're connected to what, 200,000 people?
Well, on LinkedIn, I have about 16,000 first-degree connections, and LinkedIn works in 3 degrees of separation.
Right.
So I have about 16,000 first-degree connections. I have 24 million third-degree.
That was the number I was looking for.
But I do have, as of this morning, I think I have 1,533 individually written client testimonials on my LinkedIn profile.
Okay, so going back to my overwhelm question, I've got I don't know, 10,000 people or something I'm following on Twitter,
Right.
5,000 people on Facebook, another thousands of people on LinkedIn. I'm overwhelmed just thinking about it.
Yeah.
Give me
Me too.
give me some advice. How do you sort through it? How do you sort? How do you keep track of all these connections?
That's a great question. That is a great question. I think it's important for people to understand that these social media platforms are tools. And what's interesting about human nature, whether it's social media or the branded or the Gutenberg press or any other form of technology, we are completely, I'm going to get philosophical here for 30 seconds.
Okay.
It's extremely common for human beings to invent things to help them become more productive, but ultimately they become tools of their tools. When you see people walking down the street looking at their iPhone and they walk into a fountain or smash into a wall, that person has become a tool of their tool.
We
Okay?
remember that video, the poor woman, right?
Wasn't that a great video?
Yeah.
By the way, she sued that mall. She sued the mall because she walked through a mall looking at her phone and walked into a fountain.
Yeah.
I mean, welcome to that kind of mentality. So the reason I'm saying what I'm saying is that people need to make everything I teach as it relates to social media is how to manage social media in 30 minutes or less per day. Okay? So a lot of times when people hear first, oh, Kevin's going to come in and he's going to teach us about LinkedIn. He's got a 3-hour LinkedIn boot camp. I got to tell the people early on in the conversation, everything I'm going to teach, I'm going to throw a lot at you, but understand when you follow my philosophies and my disciplines, it really only takes you about 30 minutes a day to develop a very robust social media presence. The problem is we live in a very addictive culture. Mm-hmm. So people get a Facebook account and all of a sudden now they can't go 15 minutes without checking their Facebook wall, right? Or they get on LinkedIn or they get on Twitter, just pick the platform or whatever one they invent next week. So it's important for us at the outset, or if we've been doing this for a while and we feel like we're in overwhelm, to kind of just sit back a little bit, get a cup of coffee, sit down for a minute, close the door, turn off all the pingy things that buzz on your hip and will give you all these notifications and go, what the heck am I doing? What am I doing this for? Why am I on Facebook? Why am I on LinkedIn? Because I will tell you, probably less than 2% of the people that are on social media, if you sat them down and you said to them, tell me exactly why you're on social media and what's your strategic plan to use it for whatever the outcome is, they are going to look at you like you have 5 heads. Because they never really thought about what are my goals? What am I trying to accomplish here? And what's the best way to do this with the least amount of heavy lifting? So yes, I've got a very robust social media presence, but I practice what I preach. I'm not spending 8 hours a day on social media. I use tools like Hootsuite. Uh-huh. I use timed posts on Facebook. There's ways to, when you know how to use this correctly, you can do it in a relatively short amount of time. Does that make sense?
It does, and yet it gives the impression that you're on Facebook all day, mm-hmm. And that you're engaged, which I know.
But I am engaged.
Okay, so
but I'm not on Facebook all day.
So how can you be engaged if you're timing a post to go up later?
Yeah.
That seems a little manipulative in a good way.
Yeah.
Right? So you're timing a post to go up later. It gives the impression that you're engaged, and now you're saying you are engaged. So tell me how that works.
Okay. Well, let me make sure I fully understand your question. When you say it sounds somewhat manipulative, what do you mean by that?
Well, because you're putting up a post that's going to go up in 3 hours from now, and right. To the rest of the audience, it looks like, oh, Kevin's on Facebook right now. I think I'll chat him and say hi. And you're not actually there. It's a tool that you've used.
Right. So if I have a link to an article written by Bob Berg, we'll take Bob as an example. If I have a link to a cool blog post that Bob came up with, and I time it to go out at 2 o'clock this afternoon, I've scheduled that post to go up. I don't schedule posts like, hey, I'm sitting here playing with my kids. I mean, that's manipulative. That's just silly. But if I have a link to an article or a nice positive motivational quote that goes up at a certain time of the day or something like that, I don't consider that manipulative, and I know I understand the wording the way you meant it.
Yeah.
As far as engaging, I actually do something that I don't know anybody else does on social media, but I'm not saying that my way is the right way. It's just my way. Part of what I teach through my social media training it's all about building relationships. But matter of fact, I'm going to say something that's going to sound absolutely insane when I say this. People call me a social media expert or, a guru or whatever. By the way, anybody that refers to themselves as a guru usually does that because they can't spell charlatan. Okay? There's no other industry ever invented. Have you ever heard of a lawyer that calls himself a law guru, right, or a doctor that's a heart valve guru? I mean, come on, get over yourself, right? So I never refer to myself as an expert or a guru in social media. I'm going to say something, and your listeners might think this is insane. I am a McGraw-Hill and Wiley published author on social media. Mm-hmm. I get paid crazy amounts of money to get flown around the world to talk about social media, but I don't consider myself a social media expert. I could have a very, very good conversation with you on the telephone. Would that make me a telephone expert? You and I right now are talking on Skype. I'm not a Skype expert. So when people, now maybe this is me reducing it to the absurd, but this is how my brain works. It's just me. And I killed a lot of brain cells in the 80s, closing bars, so I have limited brain cells. And please also keep in mind that unlike Bill Clinton, who swears he didn't, I inhaled deeply, okay? And frequently. So I know she's like, I'm really interviewing this guy? But you gotta keep it simple. KISS, keep it simple, sweetie. It's not about the social media. It's about the interaction and the value and the communication. So we live at a time right now where people are falling down at the altar of Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter, but the irony is that if you were Hannibal Lecter before LinkedIn, you're just Hannibal Lecter on LinkedIn. If you were Jeffrey Dahmer before Facebook, you're Jeffrey Dahmer on Facebook. So it's really not about Facebook or LinkedIn or the phone. It's about how can we become better communicators and add more value. So the one thing that I do that I don't know anybody else that does it is because so much of what I teach is about gratitude, compassion, love, acknowledgement, and that type of thing. Whenever somebody comments on anything I post on my wall, I click the like button. And I'm just my way of acknowledging that I saw their comment, even if I completely disagree with it. I'm just acknowledging that I saw it. And I have this little smiley face thing that I use a lot. But I'm not saying that that's what other people should do. But when we use words like engage, people engaging with me, there's a lot of people that could have tons and tons of followers on Facebook, and you could write something on their wall, but you don't really ever even know if they ever even saw it. Mm-hmm. So right. I never, ever, ever pass up an opportunity to build a personal connection with somebody, even if it's as small as just acknowledging that they posted something on my wall.
That explains, yeah.
And over time, that has served me so, so well.
That explains it. So now I understand how you're posting and engaging, even if you're posting in the future. Now, you said something.
Yeah.
I have so much I want to ask you today, but you said something a minute ago about you don't post pictures of your kids and up ahead of time, and that would be manipulative. But I want to talk about this because I know, and you were quite public about it, that there was someone kind of harassing you on Facebook. And where do you draw that line between being private and being authentic?
Yeah, that's tough. I've been using LinkedIn for 10 years and a month. LinkedIn's been around for 10 years and 2 months. Okay? I've been using Facebook for about, 6 years, something like that. And Twitter for maybe about 5 or 6 years too. I'm finding it interesting. My own thought processes are evolving over time. So it's going to sound weird when I say this, Michelle. I'm actually, in some ways, I'm becoming less personal than I was 2 or 3 years ago. But that does not in any way mean that I'm no longer authentic. I am never I'm never inauthentic. I mean, I just tell it like it is. As you can tell already in this interview, for those of you that are watching this, you can tell my style, right? I'm like this whether I'm sitting next to you at the airport bar or on a stage in front of 10,000 people. I'm not smart enough to have multiple personalities. There's only one Kev. So
that's good.
So everybody uses social media differently. I get very, very nervous when I hear so-called experts say, this is how you have to use Facebook, or this is how you have to use LinkedIn or Twitter. There's a lot of shades of gray. So the way that I even put the disclaimer in earlier when I answered your earlier question. This is the way I do it, but not necessarily the way you should do it. I think Chris Brogan recently wrote a great blog piece, kind of similar to what I'm describing right now, that when you're kind of new to social media, you're looking for the silver bullet, you're looking for the magic dust. Oh, I have to become an expert on Google Analytics. No, you don't, right? Or I have to become an expert on Facebook fan pages. No, you don't, right? So for me, one of the things that I really like about social media is I am very, very transparent. But I'm comfortable. You couldn't do that if you weren't comfortable enough with yourself to begin with. Otherwise, it would just be an act, and sooner or later, you would be found out to be a fraud. So I'm very, very open with my life, but it has come back to bite me a couple times, such as I had for a while there, I had kind of a stalker on Facebook that even sent a threatening letter to my home that I had to take to the police. Did I enjoy having to do that? No, but it had to be done. So now I used to completely put all my phone number, my home address, my email. I used to put everything out there, pictures of my family. About a week ago, I actually went into my Facebook account. Most people don't know this. They wouldn't know this. I took off every single picture of my family.
Wow.
So I just hid them. I just hit the hide button.
Right.
Until maybe maybe I'll go back the other way. I don't know. But right now, social media is a double-edged sword, right? It's great to be transparent, have an open mind, but don't keep your mind so open that your brains fall out.
Right. Yeah.
And use it to whatever comfort level you, the viewer of this video. There's some people that are totally guarded and they're off in the corner. Fine. That's probably how they're going to use social media.
Exactly.
The goal is not to turn them into the life of the party.
Right. You know, I work with marketing archetypes and personality types a lot. And one of the things that I think that dovetails on what you're talking about is that different styles, like when someone says you have to use social media this way or you have to do marketing this way, it works for them. And because it works for them, they think it should work for everybody.
Absolutely.
And really there's something, to be authentic in the world, you have to do what works for you.
Yeah.
And there is no one magic bullet. When you're talking about dieting or dating or bringing up your children or using social media, right? You have to take in your own personality type into account and all the things you're talking about so that you can be authentic. Are you an outgoing person, a private person?
Yeah.
But there are some lines to be drawn, I think, to protect your privacy.
Absolutely. Yeah. Using some uncommon sense, because if it's common sense, everybody would have it.
Yeah. Great conversation. Now, something else that just was like this huge aha for me that on Facebook you posted maybe about 2 weeks ago. I don't know. We're in the end of August now, and this will go up live in a month or 6 weeks or so. But a couple of weeks ago, you posted an opportunity for a speaker.
Yeah.
You put that out there, and I'm thinking to myself, but Kevin, you're a speaker. How come you're not taking this? And I went back and read the post, and it's because you have absolute clarity, spot on clarity about who your audience is, what kinds of speaking engagements you take, and you turn down the ones that don't fit inside your own profile. That is probably one of the things that does make you so successful, because you're not trying to be all things to all people. I just thought that was a huge aha moment for me about one of the many reasons that you are so successful. So talk about that clarity and purpose that you have to your clients.
Well, thank you. That was a major compliment. It's really quite simple. I don't put round pegs in square holes. If I put a round peg in a square hole, it's not going to serve me. It's not going to serve the client. It's just a bad fit. So, but you're correct. I couldn't turn down, and actually, it's not that I turned them down. I'm playing with words here. Yes, I turn them down, but I refer them.
Right.
So when somebody gives me an opportunity and it doesn't fit my model, I don't just close the door on it. I say, no, I'm all about value. I get up in the morning. The first thing I do is I look at the ceiling. I say, thank you, God, for another day. I mean, I'm originally from Jersey. Any day you wake up and there's not a chalk line around your body is a good day. So I wake up, I look at the ceiling, and I go, I got another day. I'm going to add, and I literally say this as I'm getting out of bed. I will add as much value to everybody else as I can today. That could be as little as a smile. It doesn't mean I'm going to go cure world hunger. It could just be a smile, acknowledging somebody in line at the 7-Eleven. But I'm a mosquito in a nudist colony of opportunities. I'm surrounded with opportunities to provide value. So when I get tons of emails or messages or whatever about speaking engagements that don't fit my model, I refer it out. A lot of times I'll pick up the phone or actually send it to an individual. But like what you saw, I just put it on Facebook and I said, here's the contact information. Here's what they're looking for. Here's what they'll pay. If it fits your model, rock on, brother or sister, right? Because it's, but I think part of that comes from understanding that it's not a universe of lack. It's a universe of abundance. And this isn't a kumbaya group hug moment. Let's go sit out in the field around a crystal and hum. This is when you truly understand that there is no lack. It's all about value and being creative. You don't worry about, oh boy, if I don't take this engagement, I'm going to lose out on this $5,000 opportunity. Let somebody else take the $5,000 opportunity, right? So part of it is actually going through the process of figuring out, which I think was at the heart of your question, which is figuring out what it kind of goes. I'm going to answer you in a way that sounds like I'm off topic, but I'm not. Remember earlier in the conversation about 20 minutes ago when I said people should kind of just turn off the ringy-dingy things on their hips and close down Facebook for a little while and get a cup of coffee? Very few people take the time on a daily basis, even if it was only 10 minutes, to just sit. They wake up, immediately they're looking at their iPhone. They're in the rush. Everything is like, go, Mach 5 with your receding hairline on fire. And they never take the time to just sit down with a cup of coffee and go, okay, how do I want my life to look? How can I design my life? Business, personal, relationships, spiritual, financial, health. How can I design my life so that I'm living the life that I want? And I've done that. And I continue to do that on a daily basis. So for me, it's not hard to turn down an engagement because I know exactly who my targeted clients are. So that when the reason I think most people have so much stress, and by the way, I don't do stress. I'm not saying that I don't have crap in my life like other people do. I do. I just don't get stressed about it. So I think the reason a lot of people have massive amounts of stress is because it's always the next shiny object, right? Bing, 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 bing. Whereas if you're very, very clear about what it is you want and how you can help people, a lot of the extraneous stuff just kind of filters out. It filters itself out. Is that too vague of an answer, Michelle?
Well, I'm going to ask you something else. So you've been at this now 4 years and 2 months.
Yeah.
So were you this clear 4 years ago?
Not at all.
Yeah. And I think maybe so part of this comes with the wisdom of, I'm going to throw out a hypothetical here, that maybe you took some of those, that you tried to put a square peg in a round hole a couple of times at the beginning.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, people would call me and say, hey, could you come speak to us about executive leadership? Sure, I'm your guy, right? Right. It's because you're new and you just want to get out there.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, the only way, it's the old joke, right? How do you develop, how do you get good at something? You screw it up a whole bunch of times, I mean, yeah, all the cliches. So, yes, absolutely. I was not this clear 5 years ago. I wasn't this clear 2 years ago. I wasn't as clear 1 year ago. And a year from now, I'll be even clearer.
And I think as you get clearer, my experience at least, is as you get clearer in our kumbaya hug moment, the universe becomes really clear about what to send you.
Amen, sister. Can I make a quick comment on that also?
Yeah.
And I don't know if this is going to make sense. I'm not going to go down a rabbit hole here for 5 minutes, but one of the things that I've learned, and this is a relatively recent learning, I would say 8 months or less. I guess I used to just have this belief that I would serve a gajillion clients. And I guess there are business models like Walmart, that's a model for them, right? Starbucks, that's a model for them. But with what I do, that is not a model for me. So for me, it's been very, very beneficial for me to figure out over the last 8 months or so that actually I can have a very big social media presence. I could have a lot of people kind of know me in the periphery or heard of me. But as my model evolves, I'm going deeper with fewer. And you can, and if we want to talk about money for a second, this in no way inhibits cash flow or income. It actually enhances it. But that's just my model. So with me, I'm really becoming more of a boutique or a bespoke or custom, these are all fancy words for custom, type of firm. So that I would predict a year from now, I probably will only have anywhere from 100 to 200 clients max.
So I'm interviewing Perry Marshall, who is the master of the 80-20 principle, Pareto Principle. And he talks a lot, and I'm looking forward to getting his insights, because he talks a lot about how really 80% of your clients, 80% of your income comes from 20% of your clients. And then if you keep drilling that down even more and more, that the most business and the most income comes from just a very small percentage of your clients. And that's what I hear you saying.
I'm actually going beyond that. And I'm not putting down the Pareto Principle that we're all familiar with.
Yeah.
I actually stopped believing in the Pareto Principle about 3 years ago. But I understand it from a high level, the 80-20 rule. We're all familiar with that, right?
Right.
I'm about to say something that's going to sound cynical. But you know me, Michelle. A lot of the people watching this don't know me, but you know me.
Right.
I'm not a cynical person. Even in my email signature, it says quite possibly the most positive and encouraging person on earth. I'm an extremely optimistic person. But what I'm about to say is going to sound harsh, but it's not intended to be harsh. I stopped believing in the 80-20 rule about 3 years ago. I now believe, and I have all the evidence to prove in my own life, that the world really operates on a 98-2 principle.
Okay.
98 and 2. Now, this is not shades of Mitt Romney. This is not shades of the 4%. Sometimes I bring this into my conversations when I look at my audiences, because I never give the same talk twice, and I don't have a filter, so I never know where I'm going to go. But I can think of multiple times that I've said this from stage, and somebody in the audience comes up with the normal, but wait a minute, what if I was born into the 98%? Or what if I'm black? Or what if I'm white? Or what if I'm old? Or what if I'm skinny? Or what if I'm fat? Or what if I'm thin? Pick your excuse. And I tell them, here's the best part of the 98-2 principle. It has nothing to do with the color of your skin, your age, or where you were born, or whether your father beat you as a child. The 98-2 principle just says 2% of the people in any industry or in anything that you choose to do, from fly fishing to marketing, 2% of the people are absolutely playing full out and crushing it. Now, there's 20% that are doing very, very well.
Right.
But 2% are the cream of the cream of the cream of the crop. So the most liberating part of the 98-2 rule is, if you want to be in the 2%, it's just a decision. Find out what they're doing, observe them. They have this new thing called the internet. I hear it's going to be pretty big. So you can't really use, well, I can't really see what they're doing. Sure you can. Just turn on your computer and start going into Google, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. You can totally figure out what they're doing. So if you really want to become really good at what you do, understand that you're really going to come into the 2% category, which is the best of the best. I hope that made some sense.
So you watch other people.
Yeah.
you become the best at what you do? Do you have to be the best at what you do to become part of the
You have to be the best at, not, when I say the best,
yeah.
there's a little irony and paradox in this. If you were trying to become the best 100-meter dasher in the world, pretty slim chance you're going to beat Usain Bolt, right? Who's running a 100-meter dash in 9 seconds.
Yeah.
So part of that is genetics. But if you really want to become a great sprinter, then become the best sprinter you possibly could become for yourself within whatever physical limitations you have. So if you're truly trying to become the best at whatever it is that you're trying to do, it really has nothing else to do with anybody else that's doing it. Matter of fact, when people truly understand this, it completely eliminates the entire thought of competition. Because now you go from you're not competitive. You wake up in the morning, you're not trying to compete against anybody. You're in creation mode. And if you're in creation mode, by definition, you actually have no competition. Because nobody else can truly create what you can create for your clients in a custom manner, because nobody else is you and has your experience and your baggage and your life skills and everything else that you bring to the table. There's that's a whole other hour-long, interview on getting from competition to creative. Yeah.
You'll love this. I just was at a seminar this week where a lecturer from Kent State was there talking about entrepreneurship, and the number one thing that sets successful entrepreneurs apart from those who fail is creativity.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
And we all have it.
Right.
We all have it.
Yeah.
It's just, for all kinds of social and other reasons, people forget.
Yeah.
And when you reconnect with that innate creativity that everybody has, I'm not trying to be religious here, but an apple tree creates apples. It doesn't create pears. A lion doesn't birth a hippo. It births lions. We have to be like that from which we come. So this has nothing to do with Christianity or Muslims or Jews or anything. We come from a creative entity, whatever you want to call it. So by definition, if you come from the most creative thing in the universe, you're already creative. The question is, are you really awake enough to catch that, right?
Yeah.
Because if you get it, then every single day becomes exciting, because you're even down to the moment. You can go whole Eckhart Tolle on this if you want. On a moment-to-moment basis, you're creating your reality. So there's nobody that does what Michelle Vandepas does. There's nobody that does what Bob Berg does. There's nobody that does what I do, right? Because we are absolutely active participants in creation. Yeah.
In a minute, we're going to send people to the special offer that you've got going. But to whet people's appetites, because I know that your special offer is all about Twitter and LinkedIn and so forth, give me the top 1 or 2 secrets that you can tell me about creating a LinkedIn profile or posting on LinkedIn. Give me a secret or 2.
LinkedIn has baked into its algorithms search engine optimization functionalities, just like Google does. So if somebody was an architect or a chiropractor, and they, in their LinkedIn profile, used the word chiropractor or other keywords related to chiropractor repeatedly in a non-obvious fashion, so it doesn't look goofy,
right,
they could actually make sure that they show up on the first page whenever anybody on LinkedIn does a search on chiropractors. If anybody goes on LinkedIn and types in social selling or relationship marketing, I either show up as number 1 or I'm on the first page. That's not an accident. So in a more and more interconnected world with 225 million people on LinkedIn, 3 new people per second, you don't want to be part of the herd. So I would suggest that your viewers look at their LinkedIn profile, think of maybe a half a dozen or a dozen keywords, start putting those keywords in a creative fashion throughout their LinkedIn profile, and then testing what I'm saying to see if it's true. Go put those keywords into the search box and hit the search button and see how they rank, and then get themselves up to a higher ranking. That's one of 100 secrets I could give you.
I love that. What
Twitter? Here's my secret for Twitter.
Yep.
Anything somebody posts on Twitter, called a tweet, right?
Yeah.
Use the same, and actually this applies to LinkedIn and Facebook too. Use a ratio that I would also suggest you use in real life, offline, in an interpersonal conversation. If I was having a conversation with Michelle Vandepas over coffee right now, and let me put a disclaimer in here, this is not manipulation, because it's going to sound like manipulation to people that have low self-images. I'm going to make sure that 70 to 80% of the conversation that I have with Michelle is about Michelle and not about Kevin. Not because I'm trying to schmooze you or manipulate you or get you to owe me, or I'm just taking such a sincere interest in you because I have a sincere interest in you. And I'm allowing you to talk about your favorite subject, which is you. Everybody's favorite subject is themselves. That's how we're wired, right? So whenever somebody posts something on Twitter, or by extension LinkedIn or Facebook, I would suggest they think about, before they post anything, whether it's a scheduled post or a live, in-time, real-time post, use a 70-30 or an 80-20 ratio. Am I just posting, buy my product, sign up for my e-course, I'm great at what I do, or there's nothing wrong with the shameless self-promotion every once in a while. But if that's all somebody's posting, who wants to hear that crap? So make sure 70 to 80% of anything you post on Twitter or LinkedIn or Facebook is in some way adding value, or at the very least inspiring or humorous, and then you've earned the right to do a shameless self-promotion 20 or 30% of the time. That's a simple Twitter tip.
Love that. Thank you. And that's really a sales tip.
It's human, it's interpersonal relationships.
Yeah. So going full circle there. So people can find out more about what you're offering for this special offer just for our listeners today, that they can go get information about LinkedIn and or Twitter. It's at kevinknebl.com. I'm going to spell that. Kevin, K-E-V-I-N, Knebl, KNEBL.com/special offer. Right?
Knebl really looks like it needs another vowel. Yes. K-N-E-B-L. Could I please buy another vowel?
Yeah.
Yes.
.com/special offer. My last question for you today. If you had $1 million sitting around, who would you give it to and why?
I had $1 million sitting around. So you're presupposing I would give it to somebody.
I am. To give to somebody. If you had $1 million to give to somebody, or an organization, a cause.
What a wonderful question. Boy, that really catches you off guard. $1 million sitting around, who would I give it to and why? I would give it to... Boy, that's tough, Michelle. And it has to be given as a lump sum.
No. It doesn't.
It's interesting that you're asking what you're asking, because one of the things that I'm going through right now in my own business is I'm committing in 2014 to give 10% of all my net revenues back to charity. Okay? So I'm actually it's interesting you asked me the question when you asked me it, because I'm right now going through the process of identifying a couple of charities that I want to become more active in and give 10% of my net revenue to. I think the answer would be whenever I identify who those 2 or 3 charities are, I'd probably just split it up into $333,000 times 3 and give it to those 3 charities. So I think that's the best answer I would have for now.
That's great, and you don't know who they are yet.
I don't. I'm going through the sorting process.
Right. So the great news about that is you'll have to come on again next time and give us us your answer. Thank you, Kevin. It's been great having you here, and I can't wait to follow you some more on Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook. I'm going to get back on LinkedIn to start poking around in my own profile there.
Yeah, it's a great site. Thank you so much for having me on this interview. For anybody that's watching this, I'm a very open person. If you ever want to connect with me on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, just send me an invitation. Mention that you heard me on Michelle Vandepas's Skype interview. And just I'm sticking my hand out in friendship to anybody who's watching this, saying I'm all about paying it forward, and I challenge you to make me prove it. Call me, email me, text me, whatever you want, 2 cans with a string or smoke signals. If I can help you in any way, I give you my word as a gentleman. I'm happy to help you. I'm easily found. Type my name into Google or go to kevinknebl.com, sign up for my newsletter, my blog, or whatever. Michelle, I love you. You're awesome. I hope I get to see you face-to-face again soon.
Good. Thank you, Kevin. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.